Okay, today we're going to start by Yatsu Elo Ve'elo. It's about maybe two-thirds down in the page on Kufhei Amid Beis 105b. Mishnah said, well, first of all, we thank Hashem that we're able to enter every day. It's of our learning. We should have this English immediately. Moshe, it's cold in Florida today. Probably cold by you also.
Yeah, here it's about 15.
15. Okay, where are you today?
I'm in Upper Mississippi.
Here it's about 50.
Right.
50.
Never.
Okay. So let's see. The Mishnah said, "Yatsa Elavela." We're talking about the people that are carrying the carbon out, the Farman Esrafim, the Semer Esrafim. Says that that the clothing become tummy. When do their clothing become tummy? It says Yatsa Elavela when they both leave. When the first ones, they're holding it on poles. First group, second group, then everyone's tummy. Minani Mili. How do we know? The Gemara asks that once they leave the Azara, which is called the Machana, the camp. There's three camps, right? Once they leave the first camp, which is the Azara, that the clothing become tummies. It says the Tana Rabbana was taught in a Brisa. It says regarding the Parvasar of Yom Kippur, it says the par and the sa'ir, the blood is brought inside to the Kodesh, should be brought outside the camp and it should be burnt there. That's what it says. So it says that it's burnt outside the camp. What does that have to do with when the clothing become tamei? Lahalan over there. Lahalan is over there. It's that's referring to the par helim davar shel tzibur. There's three pars that are going to be thrown around over here. One of them is the par of Yom Kippur, which is the par v'sar of Yom Kippur. Another one is the par helim davar shel tzibur. That's the par that if the community did a sin based on a verdict of the Bezdin, of the Sanhedrin. Another one is if the Kohen Gadol does a sin, par Kohen Mashiach. And now all of them have the same sort of idea where the blood is brought inside the sanctuary and the actual flesh is burnt outside the camps. So Lahalanu Aymar, over there it says by those other sacrifices, not the Yom Kippur ones, it says Chutz l'shalish machanas. It says that it has to be burnt outside the three camps. Kan, over here by Yom Kippur, the Parvasal Yom Kippur, it says the machanachas only says one. Now, why does it only says outside one camp? Now, the truth is that it's not burnt outside one; it's burnt outside three camps because it's learned one from another. Why doesn't it say it directly? So it says it's coming to teach me that one camp, it specifically wants to tell me that there is a significance to leaving the first camp because over there the clothing become tamei, right? What's wrong? It says it different in your translation. Good. The Azara. No. What's happening is it's contrasting the three camps of it's comparing the three camps of the desert where I had the Machane Shechina, Machane Levia, and Machane Yisrael because they were actually camped. They would encamp, right? They would set up the Mishkan. That's called the Machane Shechina. Then the Levium would be surrounding it. That's called Machane Levia. Surrounding that would be Machane Yisrael. Now we have to transpose that over to Yerushalayim. So we have the Machane Shechina, which is the Beis Hamikdash. We have the Machane Levia, which would be the Harabayas. And we have the Machane Yisrael, which is Yerushalayim. So the three camps are now in the city itself. So what would be outside the three camps would be outside Yerushalayim.
So, and then the third one will be to the wall. That's the one that extended to the wall of the wall.
Maybe the wall of Yerushalayim, maybe. But here we're talking about that when do they become tamei? By the Machane Shechina, by the wall of the Azara, the wall of the courtyard, right? So v'hi gufa minalan. How do we know that We go back to discuss how do we know that the chatas hapnimius it's burnt outside the three camps. The Tanur Rabbana was taught in a brayso vaytzias kol hapara mechutz machna. It says you take the entire bull outside the three camps. This is Perik Dalet pasuk Yud Beis. You should then take the bull skin, its flesh, its head, its legs, its inner, its waist. You should take out the entire bull to a pure place outside the camp, namely to the ash depository. You should burn it in firewood. It should be burnt on the ash depository, even if there are no ashes there. They add in parentheses. So the pasuk says, "Vaytzias kol hapara mechutzim al makom tar al shefach hadeshin v'tzarv v'yisei al eitzim beish al shefach hadeshin yisarif." Now, this is referring to the par kohen hamashiach. Yeah, in kohen hamashiach yachda. This is referring to that. So over there it says that it's burnt outside the camp. Okay. Ata imer. When it says outside the camp, you say chutz l'shalish machanes. You say it's outside the three camps, which means outside Yerushalayim. Ein elam machanachas. How do you know it's outside three camps? Maybe it's only outside one camp. Shvaimer b'paraida. So when you go over to the paraida, which is the other one, the other when the congregation sin, not the kain hamashiach, not the kain gadol. Over there it says, right? It says over there michutz machana, similar. That's pasuk chaf aleph. That was pasuk Yud Beis. We go over to pasuk chaf aleph. The communal sin offering of Ibim Kol Adas Yisrael Yishku. So over here it says V'hitzi Esapar El Michutz Machane. Okay, Kasher Saraf Esapar Rishon. It says. So now it says Shein Tzarich Leimar. It doesn't need to say Al Michutz Machane. Sharei Kvar Nemar Kasher Saraf Esapar Rishon because it says exactly as he burnt the first one. So it says just like the first one. So you don't have to explain that it's outside the camp because you already said that it's like the first one. So why does it have to say that's outside the camp? It's coming to tell me a second camp that it's outside of. When it says the place by Chusamachna, it says Chusamachna where the place where they put the ashes. Jane Tzarech Laimar, but there it doesn't need to say why. Because we said by the par kind of Mashiach that where is it placed? Al Shefach Hadeshin on the place of the ashes. So now I know where the ashes go. So by the ashes doesn't need to say Al Mechutz Machane. So it's Litin Le Machane Shli. It's coming Machane Shlishis. It's coming to tell me outside of all three camps. So all three camps comes from the three places where it says Mechutz Machane: the Deshen, the Par Kain Mashiach, and the Par Halam Davar. We didn't mention the Par Yom Kippur. That's what it seems. Okay. Reb Shimon, remember Reb Shimon? Shimon said that the tumah that goes on the people that are burning it doesn't go on them when they leave the courtyard. It goes on them when she yutzas sa'ar bekulei. Ein metamen she yutzas sa'ar beruban. It's ein metamen. They only become tamei when the fire takes over most of the animal. That's when they become tamei. Well, we learned that the par was it the par kain, the par of Yom Kippur, right? Par of Yom Kippur says michutz machna, so which is not mishalish machnas. Why is it michutz machna? It doesn't say michutz machna. It's only machna achas. So we learned from that was teaching me that the tumah goes on the people when they leave the first camp. According to Reb Shimon, what does he do with that? The high michutz machna of Yom Kippur, ma'yavadle, what does he do? It says mi ba'leila kedetanya. He uses it for another brisa. It says Rabbi Eliezer Reimer Nemar Kan chutz machna. It says by Yom Kippur It says that it's taken outside the camp. And Emela Alon, Chutz Machane, and it said over there, this is actually by the Paraduma. It says, Michutz Machane, Ma'ala Halon, Shalish Machane, just like by the so confusing here. I thought it was talking about the Paraduma, now it's telling me that it's the maybe it's both. Mala alon, just like by the Param and Israfim, it's Chutz L'Shalish Machnes, Afkan, Chutz L'Shalish Machnes. So it's learning it like this. It says by the Paraduma Chutz Machne. It says we know by the Param and Israfim, right? It says also Chutz Machne, and we know that by the Param and Israfim, the bulls that are burnt, because the blood was taken in the sanctuary, so the flesh is burnt outside. We know that that's outside the three camps. So to the Paraduma is outside the three camps. Mala Halan Lemizrach Shal Yerushalayim, just like over there by the Paraduma, it's on the eastern side of Yerushalayim, because it says you have to sprinkle it towards the entrance of the Oyel Mayed, which would mean that this is hard for Americans to follow, but it means you're facing the west. Yeah, it means you're facing the west. Because in Eretz Yisrael, in the eastern side of the Beis Hamikdash was the entranceway. The western side was the Kodesh HaKodashim. Yeah, so we face east, thinking but we're facing the back of the Kodesh HaKodashim. When you actually get there, you have to go around and you have to go through the entrances on the east to go.
It's shorter.
Right. So they were on the mountain on the other side, further away. They were on the mountain on the other way, facing the entranceway. So just like over there, it's Mizrach Shel Yerushalayim. Afkan, also by the Param Nisrafim, where is the place where it's burnt? Mizrach Shel Yerushalayim. Okay, so that would be the explanation for why it says Michutz Machane, according to Reb Shimon. According to Reb Shimon, you don't become tamei when it leaves for the first camp. So why does it say Michutz Machane? So when we really know it's outside the three camps, why does it just allude to it as once? It's coming to tell me that it's coming for me to learn from the Para Aduma to the Parshal Yom Kippur to tell me where Michutz Machane is it. It's coming to tell me that it's on the eastern side. So according to the Rabbanan, that they learn Michutz Machane that the clothing becomes tamei from that Michutz Machane. So how do they know which side to burn it on? Where do they burn it? So the Gemara says, Kedetanya, we have a brisa for that too. Heichan Nisrafim, where is it burnt? Let's find Yerushalayim, not to the east, but to the north. They have a different place. Chutz L'Shalish Machanes, outside the three camps. Rabbi Yisrael Glili and Rabbi Yisrael Deshen Nisrafim. Rabbi Yisrael Glili says that it has to be burnt where the deshen, where the ashes were placed earlier. Is he arguing where that location is? I'm not sure. But he says that you have to put ashes there first. That's what it looks like. Amar Rava says, Mantana de Polagola de Rabbi Yisrael Glili, who argues on Rabbi Yisrael Glili, who says that you don't need ashes there. It says Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, it's Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. The Tanya, started in a brayso, Al Shef Chadesh and Yisarei. It says clearly that you should burn it on the place of the ashes. Sheyei Sham Deshen. That means that there's supposed to be ashes there. Parentheses. Sheyaktim l'Sham Deshen. Oh, Sheyaktim. You should have it there first. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says it doesn't mean that there's supposed to be deshen there. Rather, it means sheyehei makaymai mushbach. It says al shefach hadeshen yisaref means that it has to be you have to burn it in a place where that's in an incline, on a slope. And shefach hadeshen means where the ashes will pour, means it will slide down. Yeah, doesn't mean that you have to have ashes there. That's Machlekes Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Ben Yaakov. Amalei Abaya. So Abaya says to who was talking here, Rava.
So one before
Yeah, before they would burn it, you would have to have ashes there first. Abaya says to Rava, if Rabbi Eliezer holds that it needs to be slanted, maybe everyone holds that there needs to be ashes. The whole question is that it doesn't need to be slanted also. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds that it needs to be slanted besides for the ashes. And the Tanna Kama just told that you don't need the ashes there. And not you don't need ashes. It doesn't need, you need ashes, but it doesn't need to be slanted. Maybe that's the machlekes. Okay. Anyway, doesn't resolve that. Tanur Rabbanan. Torah in the Brisa, Seiref Mitamim Begadim. Said that according to Reb Shimon, the tumah doesn't come on the impurity doesn't come on the clothing when they leave the courtyard. It comes on the clothing when the majority of the animal is burnt. It says when is what's going on over here? Who's becoming tummy? It says the one that burns the animal mitame begadim, his clothing become tummy. But not the one that lights the fire. It's only the one that burns the animal. Not the one that sets up the wood for the fire. It doesn't. He doesn't become tummy. Then who is the one that burns it? It's the one that's assisting at the time of the burning. Maybe even when it becomes ashes, and he continues to be involved, it becomes to mitamim begadim, Talmud Laimar. It says, so the pasuk says, right, regarding the Parvasar of Yom Kippur, it says, Haseiref Oisam. Oisam mitam begadim, Mishanasa Efer ein mitam begadim. Only the actual animal, after it becomes ashes, then it doesn't cause the clothing to become tummy. Shimon says, it says only when it's burnt, but not when the flesh is just dissolving or melting. It's because of the heat. Which means Reb Shimon holds that it needs to be actually majority burnt for him to become tummy, not just scorched or something. My binaya, what's the difference between these two opinions? Amarava ikabinayo the shabi charucha. If it before it became ashes, then but it's still scorched. According to the Tanna Kama, he's tummy because it didn't become ashes yet. According to Reb Shimon, he's not tummy because that's only nitach habasar. He only becomes tummy. That's only like that starts to melt. So it's only starting to dissolve, but it needs to be majority burnt according to Reb Shimon to become tummy. Hajjan lacht vol yom. Another. Okay. We're up to, what is this, the 12th parak or the 13th parak? This is the 13th parak. Hasheichet, another 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks to Zvachim. Sorry?
No, it's okay.
The next chapter, next parak, is about sacrificing an animal outside the temple on an outside altar. So we know that you're not allowed to slaughter it out there and you're not allowed to burn it out there, right? It has to be once the Mishkan or the Beis Hamikdash was set up, then you weren't allowed to bring on private altars. The private altar is called a bama. You weren't allowed to bring the sacrifices. So the terms that we're using is hashechet bachutz. Chutz means outside. Shechet bachutz means he shechts it outside. And mala bachutz means he offers it up on the fire outside. It says hashechet v'mala bachutz. Someone that slaughters it and he also offers it up on a private altar. So he's chayev ala shchita, v'chayev ala Allah. Rashi tells me that we're dealing with Behelam Echad. He didn't realize the mistake until he was done with both of them. And the idea here is that they're two separate prohibitions. They're two independent prohibitions. I think this Helam Echad, what it's trying to tell me, why does Rashi say Helam Echad, is that if it would be in Shtei Halamas, if he forgets and then he remembers in middle, so then even if it would be the same prohibition, but because you remembered in middle, you would be chayav another chatas, you would be chayav a second time. So what the significance of this Mishnah is that even though he did not remember in middle, but these are two independent prohibitions, just like the malachas of Shabbos. You do all 39 while forgetting that that these are prohibited, right? So you forget it. So then you chayav 39 chatos, right? You have to bring 39 karbanos. Each one is another chiyuv. So it's over here, each one is another chiyuv. That's what he's saying. Sheichet is its own chiyuv, and halah is its own chiyuv. Allah, does it follow the kavana?
Wanted to eat tree, he ate kosher instead. He's hiding.
No, he's not chayav. It says he needs an atonement but he's not actually chayav. Remember that? It needs an atonement, but it doesn't mean that he's actually chayav. The chayav would only be if he actually commits a sin. If he thinks of committing a sin, he won't be. He's not chayav.
If he ate the meat thinking it was
Trade. Yeah, but he's not actually chayav the whatever it is. Yeah, it says you're right about it. It does say that he needs atonement. That doesn't mean it's actually the same. In this physical world, it has to be the actual act. You can't judge people by their thoughts. Even though on the internal level, spiritual level, the thoughts are significant, very, very significant. But yeah, but over here, when it comes to how many chatos the thoughts do break it up into, is it one sin or is it two sins? But over here, we're saying even if it should be one sin because it was only one forgetting, but because this is two independent prohibitions, he's chayav twice. Basi Aglili Aimer. Basi Aglili says, Shachat b'fnim v'hela b'chutz. Our Mishnah is missing a word. It's supposed to say now chayav. Have a little correction on the side. Vishecht inside the temple, inside the Azara. And then he takes the meat outside. So he's going to be chayav. However, Shachat b'chutz v'hela b'chutz, he's going to be pater. He slaughters this outside, and then he brings it up outside, he's going to be pater. Why? What did he offer up outside? The he'd be chayav for the shechita, right? But he's going to be exempt for the offering up. Because what did he offer up? He offered up a sacrifice that was invalid. Why was it invalid? Because it was slaughtered outside. So Amrulai, the sages said to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, he said, 1 second. According to your logic, someone slaughters the sacrifice inside, and then he brings it outside, so he's going to be chayav. But according to your logic, that if he slaughters it outside and he offers it up outside, he should be pater because it was pasul when he slaughtered it outside. So guess what? If he slaughtered it inside and then he tries to bring it outside, as he's bringing it outside, it becomes pasul. So when he offers it up outside, it's pasul as well. So why should he ever be chayav? It's always pasul.
whether it got the file or not. They files.
What are you referring to? Hanukkah? What is it? Oh. Okay, I'm not sure. Yeah, not sure of the comparison. Maybe I'm not familiar. Okay, it says Hatame she'achal, similar machlekes, right? Tame she'achal, if someone's tummy that he eats a piece of a sacrifice, so he eats from kodesh meat. Bein kodesh tame, bein kodesh tar, whether the meat that he's eating was tame or whether the meat that he's eating is tar, he's chayiv. Yeah, even though, let's say it's invalid because it's tame, right? He's still chayiv. That's the first opinion. This is very similar to what we said before, that even though an animal was slaughtered outside the temple, which means it's an invalid sacrifice, but then when he offers it up, he's still chayiv, even though it was invalid. So it's over here, when someone's tamei is eating tamei meat, even though the meat was tamei anyway, but nevertheless, because it started off as a karban, as kodesh, and he's tamei, so he's going to be chayiv for eating that. Rabbi Yossi Glili, we just had, he says tamei she'achal tar is chayiv. Only if what you're eating was eligible to be eaten tar, that's when you're going to be chayiv. But tamei she'achal tamei is going to be pater. Shleichal davar tamei. He didn't eat something holy; he ate something impure. Amrulai, the sage said to him, "Af tamei she'achal asatar." According to your logic, even someone that's tamei that eats something that's tar, he should also be exempt. Kivan shenaga by timu, because it becomes tamei as he's eating it. What's the difference between if he's the one that makes it tamei while he's eating it, or if someone else made it tamei before he started to eat it? They're basically saying he's only chayiv if he's the one that makes it tamei. So what's the difference? Tar shachal tamei. Someone that's pure that eats tamei food is pater she'ein chayiv ela al tumas haguf. It's just telling me that when we say eating tamei, eating or contaminating meat of a sacrifice and eating it, that's only an issue. That's on the prohibition of kares would only be if the person is tamei and when he's eating this food, whether food is tamei or not, that's machlekes. But when there's the prohibition of kares is when the person tumas haguf, the person is tamei, but not just when the meat is tamei. If the meat is tamei, then there's no kares. If the person's tar. Okay, the Gemara is going to go through the source of sheichet and mala, slaughtering and offering it up, that there should be the two issues. First of all, there needs to be a prohibition. And the prohibition tells me that there's going to be a karban chatas if it's done b'shegig, because it says thou shall not. Thou shall not means that if it's b'shegig, you have to bring a chatas. And then there's also going to be the punishment of kares if it's done b'mezid. You have to have both of those. You need a prohibition to tell me that there's a chatas, and then you need the punishment to tell me that there's kares. Bishlei mahala, when it comes to offering it up, ksiv einish, ksiv asara, it tells me both. It says kares. It also says the prohibition. Thou shall not, right? Einish the ksiv, the punishment that says any man of the house of Israel or of someone or of the convert that will offer up a sacrifice, the el pesach el mayed la yivienu, and he doesn't bring it, and they do not bring it, they do not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting. Pasuk says, "V'nichras ha'ishahu me'amav," that man is cut off from the nation. By the way, a non-Jew is allowed to bring a sacrifice outside of the temple. This is just a Jew or a convert. Anyone that's Jewish is not allowed to bring a sacrifice outside the temple. Yeah. This is, I mentioned once, there was a discussion amongst people what they would do if they found out that they weren't really Jewish. So they were going to convert, but they found out something was wrong in the lineage. The grandmother converted, it wasn't a good conversion or something, and they're not Jewish. What would they do meanwhile? What would they do? So someone said after all the narishkeit, they go to a treif restaurant, all that stuff. So someone said they would bring a karban outside the Beis Hamikdash. Because only even though there's no Beis Hamikdash, how could someone bring a karban today? He's not Jewish. He could bring a carbon outside the Beis Hamikdash. So in that interim, he'll do something for Hashem. He'll bring a carbon. Okay. So Azhara Diksiv. Where's the negative prohibition? So it says karis. Where's the negative prohibition? Hishama lacha pentala lasechi. Be careful, lest you'll bring a sacrifice, an oila, in any place. B'chol makam shatira, the pasuk says, any place where you so desire, where you see. Like Ravin says, the name of Rabbi Lazar, kol makam shnemri hishamer pen baal ina leisase. When it says the words, be careful, hishamer, or pen, lest, and al, which means do not, all of those are negative prohibitions. Even if it says, be careful, that means negative. It means thou shalt not. And over here it says the word lest. It also says hishamer. The problem is by shchita by regarding the punishment of karis, it says any man of the house of Israel that slaughters a ox or a lamb or a goat in the camp, or he sechs it outside the camp, and he doesn't bring it to the tent of meeting, so what happens to him? Benichras. So it says the einish. Ela azhara. Where does it say the negative prohibition? Minalan, azhara minalan. It doesn't say hishamer pen tishchat. It doesn't say that. It only says hishamer pen tala. Only that you bring up. So we're looking for the source that there should be a carbon, a negative prohibition. There should be a carbon for shchita schutz, it's called. Makra, a source that we found is it says v'layizbechu oid. The pasuk says that you should not shecht anymore your sacrifices la seirim. Seirim meant demons. Don't slaughter it for demons that you may stray after. Where's that pasuk? V'yikra Yud Zayin. Zion. It's got to be translated here. Thou should no longer slaughter they should no longer slaughter their sacrifices to demons after whom they stray. This should be an eternal statute for them for all generations. So we're understanding that this means you can't slaughter an animal outside the Beis Hamikdash. Where it says, 1 second, that pasuk that you just quoted as your source, that someone that slaughters an animal outside the Beis Hamikdash is going to have to bring a carbon because it says, "B'la yizbechu, thou shalt not." 1 second, we need it for Rabbi Lazar because Rabbi Lazar says, "Minayin lezeveach beimal markulas." How do you know that someone that slaughters an animal to the idol Mercury, shu chayev, that he's going to be chayev? See, markulas, if you remember, the way markulas was worshipped, we learned this in Avodah Zarah, was that they would throw a rock at it. There was stones that were out on the crossroads. 3 stones, 2 stones on the bottom, 1 stone on top. And the way they would worship was to throw a rock. How do you know that if someone slaughtered a sacrifice to the Mercury, to that idol, that would also be a prohibition? Maybe it's only chayev if he does it exactly the way that was typical of worshiping it. So it says like this. It says, the ksiv, it says that they should not sacrifice anymore. We don't need that pasuk to tell me about worshiping the idol because the ksiv echayavdu, because I have a pasuk that says that the person should not try to figure out how to serve the idols and ask what's the way of serving the idol. So it says echayavdu, which means I know that there's a prohibition to serve an idol in the normal way. How do you know that there's even a prohibition to serve an idol in an abnormal way? For example, to slaughter a sacrifice to Mercury. How do we know that? So we're going to say that is coming to teach me that if you slaughter an animal to an idol, which the way of worshiping it was not slaughtering an animal, you're still going to be chayav. So how could you tell me that this pasuk is teaching me a prohibition of slaughtering outside the temple? It's teaching me a much more severe prohibition of worshiping an idol in an abnormal way. Rabba says, Kari Bei V'la Yizbechu, V'Kari Bei V'la Yoid. We divide up the pasuk, and we can get two things out of this pasuk.
Customary way we learn from the Torah. They had every way possible.
Yeah, but each idol has its own specific way. I know that each specific way is prohibited because it says you should not ask what's the way to do it. What about if you do another way of worshiping for this idol, which is not the typical way? For example, he bows down, or he, and then it won't be worship.
Is this saying that the Avodah Shaloka Darka, is this a Deraisa or a Rabbanan?
It's a deraisa.
It's a
But it's
Deraisa.
only the specific ones that only specific avodah shalei kedarka would be. It needs to be the ones that we would do for Hashem, which is sacrificing or burning or something like that, bowing down. I think we said there were four things that even if it's shalei kedarka, is still chayav. If it would be different, if someone would go to the bathroom in front of a cross, and have intention that he's worshiping it by going to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the way that people worship the cross. So it wouldn't be chayav for worshiping an idol. That's not the way that's worshipped. I don't know the way it's worshipped, but that it's not considered like Baal Pa'ar. Baal Pa'ar was worshipped like that. So we have specific halachas of what's considered idolatry. And if someone worships an idol in a way that would be included in this, so then it would be a violation. Okay.
They're saying this refers to the Greek god Hermes, which it's kind of funny because people worship the Hermes bags today.
I was gonna say the number one bag.
So Mercury is Hermes? No.
Yeah, that's what it's saying. The Roman god Mercurius, which corresponds to the Greek god Hermes.
Oh, I thought it was I thought they had a god Mercury, but I guess the Romans we're translating it back to the Greeks. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Your crappy cards.
In Spanish,
Wednesday. How do you say it in Spanish?
miércoles.
Mercury. Yeah, we were discussing that.
Bad cars.
Oh, and there was a car also. Are they still around?
It's saying not to get the bad car, the Mercury.
The Vodazara.
It's going to leave you without a Mazda. I'm sure there's other cars that are like that.
From your cars.
Don't throw stones at it either.
So don't. Yeah, that's right. That could be a good joke. But Meir Sharim, don't throw stones at a Mercury. Okay. So Akati mi boy le says, 1 second. You're trying to tell me that you can get two things out of this pasuk, but really we need this pasuk for something else. It says Adkan, when it says in the pasuk about shechting a carbon outside, it says v'lo yizbechu. Umedaber bekachim shektishim b'shas yisrael abamis. We get into a slight complexity over here. This is very very specific. What happened was the law of slaughtering a sacrifice, bringing a sacrifice outside the temple, was specific to certain times. There were times when it was permitted, there was certain times it was prohibited. So let's say before the Mishkan was set up, when they came into Eretz Yisrael, they were still allowed to offer sacrifices on their private altars because they didn't have a public place yet. They didn't have the Mishkan Shiloh or something. So let's say they had sacrifices that were designated before the Mishkan was set up. And after the Mishkan is set up, they then offer it outside the Mishkan. That's versus sacrifices that were designated or consecrated after the Mishkan was set up, and then they were slaughtered. Which one's worse? The one that after it was consecrated, once the Mishkan was set up, and still offered out. Ones that were consecrated beforehand, maybe could be understood that well, they were consecrated before with the permissibility of offering it outside. Maybe it still could be offered outside because it was consecrated before when a time when it was permissible. So that now the Gemara says, the pasuk's telling me only when it was consecrated, when it was prohibited already to, and then it was brought when it was permissible. Because over there I have a prohibition. It says, to the entrance of the tent of meeting he did not bring it, and he will be cut off. Ashara and the negative prohibition is punishment. It says he'll be cut off. The prohibition, it says, it says you should be careful lest you bring up your sacrifice. Mikan ve'elach bezvachim shekdishim b'shas heter bamas v'krivim b'shas iser bamas. But the pasuk that continues on, it says, so that the Jewish people should bring their sacrifices. That's talking about when they were consecrated, when it was permissible to bring on a private altar, and it was brought when it was prohibited. When it was brought when it was prohibited. It was consecrated when it was permitted. It was brought when it was prohibited. Shenemar, because it's the pasuk says, because it says clearly that so that the Jewish people will bring the sacrifices that they used to bring in the field, which means that this was consecrated when it was permissible. And now it's too late. Now you have to bring it inside. It's coming to tell you that once he slaughters it, after it becomes prohibited, it's as if he slaughtered it not for Hashem. Then the Brisa goes on, Ve'aviyam l'Hashem, you should bring it for Hashem. Zu mitzvah saseh, this is a positive command. Lo yisaseh minayin, how do you know there's a negative command not to bring it outside? It says, Talmud Laimar, the pasuk says, V'liyis b'chuayid, that's what we were looking for. You hear? V'liyis b'chuayid is coming to teach me that you can't bring the sacrifice that was consecrated when it was permissible. Now it becomes prohibited. Even though the animal was consecrated at a time when that was allowed, but now it's not allowed. So I'm using the pasuk to teach me something else. So how could we go back and say that it's coming to tell me a negative prohibition for shchita? First, he told me you can't teach it to me because it's coming to tell me avodah zarah. Now we're saying it's coming to tell me that it can't be offered. Let me go further. Let's see. Yachal ye yanishkaris. Maybe someone that offers outside the temple a sacrifice that was consecrated when it was permissible, there should be karis. Talmud Laimar, the pasuk says, this is an everlasting statute for them, for their generation. Zeis, when it says Zeis, that's coming to tell me that there's a punishment. This will be a punishment for this lahem, for them that do this. But there's no other punishment. There's only the punishment of second, let me just say this. Zayslahem. There's Einish Asay, V'leis Asay. V'lei Acheres Lam, but there's no kares. There won't be any kares for someone that offers his sacrifice that was consecrated at a time when it was permissible to bring it outside the temple. There's no kares for it. That's what we're learning from this pasuk. So how could you tell me that we're going to learn from this pasuk that someone that slaughters the sacrifice outside has to bring a korban chatas? So El Amar Rav Avin, or maybe it's Abaya, What's the correct version over here? Everyone says it's Abaya. The Gemara says Rabbavan, right? You don't have even in the text, it doesn't say Rabbavan. They switched it even in English. Okay. Elamar Abaya, rather Abaya says, Mikal v'chaymer. We're going to have a Kal v'chaymer. We'll learn it from a Kal v'chaymer that it's prohibited. Ma b'makam shlayanash. If we talk about a place where there was no kares, where did we have that? That's by the karban that was consecrated at the time when it was permissible to offer it outside the temple. And he brings it when it became prohibited. So over there, Makam Shlai Anash, where there's no punishment of kares, but Hizir, it told you not to do it. So Makam Sha'anash, a place where there is a prohibition of kares, means to shecht. We know it says that there's a prohibition of kares. So in a din shizir, for sure there should be a negative prohibition. So we're going to get a negative prohibition out of a kal v'chaymer. Now we learned that the Gemara is later on going to say that you can't use a kal v'chaymer to do this. Mazhirin min adin. Can you learn a kal v'chaymer? Can you learn a negative prohibition from a kal v'chaymer? We thought we couldn't. The Gemara is going to ask that soon. But meanwhile, this is the way that the Gemara is presenting it. Ah, great. Okay. Amalei Ravina Ravashi. Ravina says to Ravashi, we jump to the end of the Talmudic period. Oh, yeah, I have a change. There's a change here from the Shittik Metzes to Abaya instead of Ravashi. Imkain, if Ravina is talking to Abaya now. Imkain, if we're going to learn from a kal v'chaymer, then lo yaymer lav b'chelav v'teis kal v'chaymer nevela. We could do another kal v'chaymer. Why does it have to say a negative prohibition by chelav? We can learn a kal v'chaymer from nevela, from a dead animal. Ma nevela shlayanash is there nevela? There's no prohibition of kares. But there is a negative prohibition not to eat chelav, not to eat nevela. So chelav shanash, chelav that has kares in a din shezer. So for sure we would have a negative prohibition. We don't need to have a negative prohibition. The Torah doesn't need to write the negative prohibition by chelav. I would learn it automatically from nevela. Nevela that doesn't have kares, there's a negative prohibition. Chelav that does have kares, so it doesn't have to say leiseichal al chelav or whatever the pasuk is. So asa lekamei derava. Come in front of Rava, he asked this question, Amalei, min nevela and nami layasi. You can't learn it from nevela. Because you have a question. Man nevela shkem metame. 1 second. Nevela gives off an impurity, but chelav doesn't. So we would say that maybe nevela has a negative prohibition. So there's a stringency by nevela. So you can't. It's not an automatic kal v'chaymer, right? You can only learn the stricter one from the more lenient one. But if the more lenient one now turns strict, then you can't learn. So the Gemara says, Mishratzim Tmeim. We could learn Chelev from Shratzim. Over there, it doesn't say that there's kares, but nevertheless, you're not allowed to eat it. So then, automatically that would tell me that if there's if it says the prohibition, even though there's no punishment, so for sure, when there's a punishment, we would have the prohibition. So it doesn't need to say it by chelav. So it says no. Mala shratzim tmeim shematam mashu. Shratzim give off an impurity that chelav doesn't. They give off an impurity even with the drop. The Gemara says, but okay, so mishratzim tayrim from animals, little creatures that don't give off the impurity. The Gemara says, well, mala shratzim tayrim sheisurim b'mashu. They're prohibited with just a drop. Chelav is only going to be with a kazayas. It says, well, we can learn a kal v'chaymer from Orla and Klaya Kerem. That over there it doesn't say kares, but nevertheless it's prohibited. So for sure, by chelav, where it says kares, for sure it's prohibited. It says, Mal Orla Klaya Kerem, shkein yisurim ba'ana. Those have a stringency that it's prohibited to have benefit from. Chelav, there's no prohibition to have benefit from. You just can't eat it. So we learn from Shvius that by Shvius it says that you can't eat it after the zman of beer, after the time it has to be taken out of the house. So too, but there's no prohibition of kares. So by chaylev, but there is a prohibition of kares, for sure it should be prohibited, right? If there's a punishment of kares, sure it should be prohibited. Mal shviyas came to shviyas, when you exchange it for something else, the new thing takes on that prohibition. But chaylev, if you sell the chaylev, the money that you get from it isn't prohibited like chaylev. So the Gemara says, so we'll learn from Truma. And a non-Kohen is not allowed to eat Truma, a Zar is not allowed to eat Truma, and there's no kares there. If he does, where was the prohibition of kares? Is that by Tevel? Anyway, whatever the case is, the Zar that eats Truma is not chayv kares. So chaylev, where he is chayv kares, for sure should be prohibited. The Gemara says, shkein lihotem miklala. Truma is much stricter because there's never that prohibition is never relaxed. But by chaylev, the prohibition is relaxed by a chaya, by a wild animal. Chaylev is only on domesticated animals, not on wild animals. The Gemara says mikulanami. Even if we want to learn from all of them together, shekain lehuter miklalan. Chaylev is going to be more lenient because it has that relaxation of the law when it comes to that animal. Okay. Let's stop by Amar Rava.
Oh.
Abaya finished off saying that we don't need a prohibition because we have a kal v'chaymer. Right? That's what Abaya said. We don't need it doesn't need to say we have a kal v'chaymer. So we were asking on him, if you're going to use the kal v'chaymer, then we can use it in all these other places for chaylev. So we said that you can't learn the kal v'chaymer for chaylev. So we're left with Abaya's teretz. Okay. Okay. Have a good day, everyone.